Crafting in Legend of Mana is a very vast and complicated process, and can be very expensive depending on your intent. Your house can hold 5 separate crafting zones depending on quests completed, and each one has a unique mindset and can help with other crafting as well. Crafting isn't necessary to beat the game initially, but some game-breaking things can be done if crafting is handled right. Higher difficulties also need heavily customized items, since store-bought products can become inferior very quickly. While I plan to detail the steps involved in each workstation, the process has huge mechanical complexities under the hood and can only truly be understood if you look up a guide. For now though, let's look at our home's wonderful workshops. Agriculture. About the first time you talk to Gaze, you unlock the ability to farm for fruits and vegetables thanks to the tree in your backyard. Fruits serve a wide array of purposes in this game. You could feed them to pets to affect their growth potential, smith them into gear to modify properties, and even give your golem a sick paint job. Working your farm is a simple task. Just feed the tree 2 seeds, travel around the map for a few days, and then come back and harvest your crops by putting them in your farm box. However, the seeds you feed the tree directly influence what product you get. Every seed in this game has a base color, much like the core colors used in paintings. There's also a rare seed that adds every color at once for those that like to gamble with their items. Depending on what you mix, certain colors will produce a certain range of foods. For example, using a single round seed will give you a high odds for a heart mint or a spade basil, but mixing in an oblong seed will change the spawn pool in favor of a cabadillo or a squalfin. Really though, farming is super simple and something players should unconsciously do in between each mission if they want to get super deep into crafting. Musical instruments. Instrument crafting is even simpler than agriculture in both crafting and mechanical depth. Unlocking the instrument shop, and subsequently magic, is done after meeting the mages of Geo in the quest to reach for the stars, and then checking in at your workshop. As mentioned in previous videos, instruments serve as both a medium for casting magic and a way to charm the spirits of Fadiel into giving you magical coins. In order to create an instrument, you just need to choose the instrument, the material for the instrument, and a magical coin in your inventory. Depending on what you choose, a specific instrument will spawn into being. There's little mechanical depth in this since the combo of materials is static and you will always get the same product each time. For example, if you make a request for a bronze flute with a silver wisp coin, the result will always be the same. While there isn't any depth, there's a huge array of items. With 4 instruments, over 50 base materials, and 16 magic coins, the number of available stuff is so vast that most guys don't bother listing all the combinations. If you want a rule of thumb for crafting magic, always use gold coins for maximum magic potential and use your best materials to get the most out of your coins. The Animal Farm. Legend of Mana is up to a 3-player game. While your second player is usually plot sensitive, you can bring a third character along that is basically a familiar. 2 areas in your house handle ally management, the Animal Farm being the main one. The farm is unlocked after exploring Domina and having Onion Knight explain the process in the quest The Monster Farm. Pets allow you to carry any of the wide array of non-boss monsters in Fadiel as your very own personal ally, complete with all their attacks and a unique passive for your character. As shown in the quest, getting a monster involves going to a specific room in the dungeon-esque area to find an egg, baiting the egg with meat or veggies, and then ambushing it after it's done feasting. Eggs, and subsequently monster types, are determined from where you find them. Fish eggs can often be found in Mandora Beach, while the junkyard can have poltergeist eggs. Somehow. You have a ghost egg. Now, while you might get a certain egg, you aren't guaranteed a specific monster. For example, if you get a poltergeist egg, you have a chance of it becoming a chest knight, a Daneslave, a demon puppet, or even the much coveted polterbox. Raising a pet, however, is where the main mechanical depth of this feature arises. Naturally, being a pet, players are responsible for the pet's growth by feeding it. While feeding a pet isn't mandatory, what foods you feed the pet directly affect their AI logic and stat growth rates. Once a monster levels up, they consume all the food in their feed box and their behavior changes accordingly. This is really important since having a super beefed up Daneslave won't matter if he's lazy and timid. The farm also allows any non-adventuring pets to graze out in the field, gaining a slight trickle of experience to get a head start on their training over time. The farm also lets you sell pets for money should the need arise, you broke ass. While raising a pet is a bit more complex and involved, the end result can become very powerful and offers unique talents that the alternative can't give. Blacksmithing. Smithing is where 95% of a player's crafting endeavors and frustrations will come from. The blacksmith's shop is unlocked after completing Watts Drops the Hammer and investigating the workshop area at home. At the smithy, a player can craft weapons and armor, and subsequently temper them. Crafting a weapon and armor is simple. Just choose what weapon you want to craft and the base material, and you're given the subsequent weapon. On the note of weapon crafting, some weapons and armor are more suited to specific materials. Hammers, for example, come from using heavy metals such as lead or steel, while the best bow comes from higher tiers of wood or a specific metal. Tempering, however, is where all the intricacies of smithing come into play. With the wide array of items in Legend of Mana, players can do so much in smithing to break the game. With tempering, players can directly influence the weapon's stats, add elemental traits, add passive traits, add unique heavy attacks, increase the item's sell value, and many other things. However, getting deep into smithing is going to be a huge time and money investment and can oftentimes be extremely frustrating unless you use one of the many guides on the internet. I wouldn't call crafting essential initially since the game can be beaten by store-bought products, but players can easily trivialize the main game just by bumbling around in the blacksmith shop for a few hours. For the harder difficulties in the post-game, however, players will need to learn how to make a godly weapon in order to survive. Smithing, as a whole, is probably the most mechanically complex thing in this game, and probably where most of the game's code is dedicated to. It's just... ugh. Golemancy. Golems are the alternative to your third character slot. The Golem Lab is unlocked by doing the Professor Bomb's lab quest and examining the workshop soon after. I decided to discuss Golem Creation last because despite not being as complex as blacksmithing, it's still somewhat confusing to the casual players. And it's also vastly more expensive in terms of cash investment. Now, while pets are unique but unpredictable, golems are easier to control for what he does and when he does it. First off, a golem is initially built from one weapon and up to 3 pieces of armor. These directly influence his base stats, so don't be a cheapskate and work on your blacksmithing to make a great golem. Not only does the amount of armor you use affect stats on a golem, it also affects his logic grid for attack potential. The logic grid on a golem is based on the distance between it and the target, along with how filled its attack meter is. To fill the slots on a logic grid, players must first craft logic blocks from spare equipment. With logic blocks, the quality of the gear isn't as essential as, say, making the core body, but it still affects the logic block's strength. Logic blocks determine the actions the golem will take, and can vary from attacks based on the golem's base weapons, special attacks with unique traits, or support roles like making candies spawn. If done properly, players can program their golem to do things such as close-range attack spam, long-range support fire, provide healing, and many other roles. Players can also paint their golems for a bit of personal flair if you want to have Mazinger running around following you. While golems are great for tailoring their roles to the player, their costs can build up to astronomical prices and can oftentimes break a player's wallet if left experimenting with it. Sadly, that's the price players must pay for a programmable third ally. And that ends our brief look into the crafting rules in Legend of Mana. There's a lot of stuff to do in this game, so if you like crafting in video games, you're not going to be bored with this. However, it's going to take a lot of money to do a lot of stuff in this game, so you better get to farming. You gotta spend money to make progress after all, so if you want to make a bunch of good overpowered stuff, good luck.